The talk of the town this NFL offseason has been Aaron Rodgers. And to call this free agency period for him controversial or polarizing would be an understatement. A-Rod has been someone in the past known for kind of going his own way, especially through, say, his offseason retreats. But this time around, the circumstances are a little bit different. Because right now, Aaron Rodgers is still a free agent. But at the same time, it feels like he's still got a lot of leverage, and a lot of teams are waiting to see what he has to say first, bending the knee out to him. This is particularly true with the Pittsburgh Steelers. It's been a badly kept secret that they have their eye on Aaron Rodgers, but to this point, A-Rod has been non-committal. And we're in a very, very interesting situation because Aaron Rodgers is an all-time great quarterback. There's no doubt about that. Some would say the most talented that we've ever seen. It wasn't too long ago that he was the MVP of the league for back-to-back seasons. And that was in his late 30s, but now he's 41 and he spent 2 seasons with the Jets. Year one, that was a scratch. He got hurt in the first game. In year two, he didn't quite look like the MVP A-Rod we had seen in his final years in Green Bay. So now you've got this very much so veteran quarterback who was injured not too long ago that took him out the entirety of the year. And there's no guarantee that he's going to be at that same level again. But at the same time, Aaron Rodgers, for the bulk of his career, especially in the last half of it, has been really, really known for limiting his turnovers. A lot of the time, you'll see him with single digit interceptions on a year, and that's really, really impressive. So maybe there's the idea of is he accurate enough to the level where I'm not worried about the athleticism, I just need him to be able to play. But then we didn't see that really last year with the Jets. He looked as inaccurate as he has been in recent memory. And that's not to say it was a bad season, but when you combine his age, his injury a couple of years ago, and the fact that this past year was not one to write home about, Aaron Rodgers, for probably the first time of his life, does not truly have undeniable job security. Or at least one would think so, but then you consider the circumstances of free agency in which it appears that teams are really keeping an eye out for him and really wanting Aaron Rodgers on their roster, and they're willing to wait for him. He has some kind of leverage because of his veteran presence. But at the end of the day, a deal still has to be made. He is still a free agent as we speak. And once again, one team of major, major interest has been the Pittsburgh Steelers. And throughout all this drama of asking the question, where is Aaron Rodgers going to go? There has never been a question truly about his spot in the league. It's always been kind of a foregone conclusion that yes, he's going to sign somewhere, and I agree with that. But there is someone who does not, a Hall of Fame quarterback who spent all 14 years in the NFL with the Pittsburgh Steelers, and that's Terry Bradshaw. Because reports are coming out now that he's not a big fan of the Steelers' pursuit of Aaron Rodgers. Speaking with a local radio station through an interview, here's what Bradshaw had to say. He said, and I quote, "That is just, to me, is a joke. What are you going to do? Bring him in for 1 year? Are you kidding me?" So, with that statement there, it feels like Terry Bradshaw feels as though this will pretty much be a 1 year rental for A Rod in Pittsburgh. And yes, you can absolutely see that with Aaron Rodgers' age. If he had another injury like he did with the Jets a couple years ago, that would likely spell the end of his career. And even if he doesn't, even if he's healthy, you don't know how long he's going to be around. Obviously, a recent example of longevity to the level of A-Rod is Tom Brady, who was still playing at a very, very high level up till his mid 40s. His last 3 years in Tampa Bay, year one, he won a Super Bowl. Year two, he threw for 5,000 yards and over 40 touchdowns. Brady was not only out there, but he was performing at a very, very high level, among the best quarterbacks in the league in spite of his age. And Brady was someone who was never, among the top tier athletes at the quarterback position. He wasn't a big improviser, he wasn't a big scrambler for sure, but he could deliver the ball to his guys, and he could do that very, very well. So the prospect of Aaron Rodgers at this point is kind of relying on that same thing, in which his athleticism may not be the same as it once was, but you can still hope for him to have that veteran presence and that instinct to be able to deliver the ball at a consistent rate. But how long is that going to last? Because once again, Tom Brady, he is a great example of longevity, but he is also an outlier. You don't see many guys like Tom Brady doing that same thing. Rarely ever do you. especially at that level of performance. So, how long would an Aaron Rodgers tenure, whether it's Pittsburgh, whether it's elsewhere, really last? That's what Terry Bradshaw wants to ask. And then he builds upon it. He says that guy needs to stay in California, go somewhere and chew on bark and whisper to the gods out there. End quote. And with that one, that's kind of poking fun at some of Aaron Rodgers' ideals and beliefs. Now, why does all of this matter? What Terry Bradshaw has to say. And that's largely because, of course, Terry Bradshaw was once a Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback, and with that, he's got a level of credibility about him. Oftentimes, the most definitive arguments, the ones that can really stay in one's mind, are the ones that come from a place of credibility, and as opposed to someone like me, who has not really established that, who's just voicing his opinion on the internet. Terry Bradshaw, on the other end, he's been in this situation before. He's been a quarterback. He's been a QB for the Pittsburgh Steelers. His whole career there, he's a Hall of Famer. So with that, he kind of knows what he's talking about, and that can really strengthen his argument, and that's really going to be make it something more so in consideration for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, if they're actually going to listen to him, that remains to be seen, because everything I've seen, it appears that they do desire Aaron Rodgers. But Bradshaw has a voice, and he has a voice for a reason. And so when this all-time great for your team is very, very vocally against this player that you were seeing about pursuing, at bare minimum, that might make you pause and think for a second about if this guy is the right fit for the Steelers culture, and is Aaron Rodgers who we want to bring in to the Steelers organization? Does the potential ceiling of Aaron Rodgers at this point in his career, does that outweigh any negative press about him, any reactions from Terry Bradshaw? And that is overall something to consider. Now, as for how I think this will go, I think for a decent part, because of everything that Aaron Rodgers has done in his career, there's definitely an aspect of the players in the locker room that is going to support Aaron Rodgers coming in. You look at when he first joined up with the Jets, Garrett Wilson was his biggest supporter. As time went on and success kind of became harder to find, you began to see some frustration there. But the prospect of Aaron Rodgers is very exciting. So you bring him into that locker room, I think a lot of players are going to feel as though that's a big move and they're going to be happy. And so with that, that can be kind of an instant boost to your morale. However, it is on the team, it is on Aaron Rodgers to be able to maintain that success and keep that morale high. Because if you keep losing, or if Aaron Rodgers doesn't play too well, all of a sudden, it's not going to be this bright, optimistic outlook. Instead, now there's going to be questions thrown around, including from Terry Bradshaw probably, about if this was the right move, if Aaron Rodgers should have ever went to Pittsburgh. And if you're not careful, that bridge can be burnt. So with that, I think this Aaron Rodgers situation overall needs a lot of caution to it. You've got to make sure you're making the right decision, bringing him in, making sure he's a good fit with the locker room, making sure that you're being realistic, because at this point you're probably not going to get MVP Aaron Rodgers, but you can still get something out of him. He's considered by some to be the most talented quarterback ever for good reason. You can make something work with him. At this stage in his career, that's a little bit of a question mark in terms of what you're getting, but there's still something there. However, because there are so many factors to consider, it's not going to be something that you should just jump headfirst into. And as we've seen with him still being a free agent, no team has jumped headfirst. They're really considering it, weighing their options, weighing if this is worth it. But Aaron Rodgers absolutely will find himself on a team. I have no doubt about that. And if it is with the Pittsburgh Steelers, I know at least one man who won't be too happy, and that is one man with a voice, not only for what he did with the Steelers, but now being on Fox. You bring in Aaron Rodgers, you're going to have to perform and win and be successful, because otherwise negative press is coming your way. So for whoever takes the risk on Aaron Rodgers, whether it is the Pittsburgh Steelers or elsewhere, it is likely a good idea to proceed with caution and understand that Aaron Rodgers can be of great benefit to your team, but also that you're going to have to execute. And that is the path forward for Aaron Rodgers and any team that decides to move forward with him.